What? The opposite of death? The opposite of death is not life. No, that's a lie. First of all, you need to know what's the definition of death and what's the definition of life. You need to know the genuine definition of death, and you need to know the genuine definition of life. The original state of every man is death. What is death? Death is a life. Death is a life outside of Christ. Remember, God created man in his image. What is the definition of his image? Does God look like me? Does God look like you? That's the question. So many people will say, "Oh, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." You said, God is in heaven. So where was God when he created the heavens and the earth? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So that should make you rethink. God created the beginning. God created the opposite of life is not death, and the opposite of death is not life. First of all, what's your definition of death? What is your definition of life? When someone physically dies, yes, it's part of it. So what is life? Life means going to work, going to school. So what is life? Buying cars. I've always told you, don't follow the definition of men. Don't follow the definition of what the dictionary says. Of course, there are some things that is fact. The opposite of death is not life, because death is the absence of God. Death is the absence of Christ. Now, Christ is the nature of God. Christ is not your nature. The nature came from God through his breath to you. That is the true definition of life. A life without Christ is death. Death means ignorance, darkness. Now, the human being tells you that you're black, you're next to darkness. You're white, you're next to light. Is a lie. Once again, there is no such thing as a black man. There is no such thing as a white man. Now, what are we discussing? Dialoguing right here is the definition of life and the definition of death. Death is a life, or death is the absence of Christ. Life is the presence of Christ. Don't ever forget that. Because the original state of man is death. God breathed into the man. God created man in his image. Now, what is the definition of his image? Does God look like me and you? No. So what is the definition of that image when he says he created man in his image? He breathed into you. That's the reason why Paul said in Corinthians, I think it's in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 3, I pass on to you what was most important and what had also been passed on to me. Jesus died for our sin, just as the scripture said. If you read the scripture, I think 1 Corinthians 15 says, you will always see Christ and death. Christ and death. There is no life without Christ. What we define as Christ is what we do. What we define as life, is what we do, the work we go, and all of that is not life. Life is a being with Christ. So when God told Adam and Eve, if you eat out of this fruit, you will die. After they ate out of the fruit, why did they die? What did they lost? What did they lost? That means they misplaced the authority. The image of God means the authority. Image of Christ. Christ means the authority, a nature from God that birth authority inside of you, that give you that audacity to invent anything, that give you that creativity from God. That's the question. If the dictionary meaning of death means the physical absence or the physical state of man, if that's what death means, why God told Adam and Eve, when you eat out of this fruit you shall die? But after they did not die. What happened to them? That's what you should think. What did they lost? That's what you should think about. That means in God, death means the misplacement, the absence of the nature he gave to you. That's why I will tell you, limit your pride to your first name, because your last name is not yours. Even your first name was given to you. So why should you be proud? So there is no such thing as the opposite of life is death, the opposite of death is life. No, the opposite, there's the opposite of death is Christ, and the opposite of Christ is death.